Welcome to Max Loves Midland. I'm Joyce Hagen-Flint. I'm here with Kevin, and we're glad to see you, neighbors.
Welcome back to the Max Loves Midland show. I'm your weekly tour guide, Kevin LeDuc. And sometimes you go out looking for a story, and sometimes a story comes to you. Today, I'm really excited to have with me today Joyce Hagen-Flint. And Joyce, we are now friends. This is incredible, and this is the power of neighboring.
Even Facebook friends. How exciting is that?
I know, it's incredible. So last week, I was hanging out at the Midland Area Community Foundation, and it was during Neighboring Week proper. So when folks hear this, we'll be a couple weeks away from Neighboring Week.
Okay.
But Joyce came in looking for a neighboring sign because she wanted to have a little party with those in her neighborhood and do a block party. But the story that came out of that was really incredible, and I think it's just a great example of people coming together. And we did not have a sign for you that day, but I brought something from my own yard for you. So for those listening, this is one of the Celebrate Neighboring signs. We do not have extras, unfortunately. We ran out very early this year. But we had a lot of fun with these this year. You saw them at local businesses, some people's houses, and really exciting. So I'm going to send you with this today. I have the ground stake as well if you want to continue to display it, but we'll set it down for now. But we're going to do just what the sign says today. We're going to celebrate neighboring.
And it's so exciting to finally get the sign, even if it's after Neighboring Week, because when I was at the Midland Foundation office, you were very friendly and gracious to me, but you said there are no signs, and then you wanted to take a picture of me with the sign, and I'm like, so you want a picture of me with your sign that I can't have?
Listen, I wasn't trying to be disingenuous, but we needed that out on the street for the rest of Neighboring Week there on Ashman.
I don't know.
And we had to show it off.
I thought we really needed one on Oak Meadows Court because we have so much traffic there.
But after I left that day, I said, Joyce is I'm gonna make sure Joyce gets my sign at the end of this. So that came from my yard. So I'm excited for you to have it.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the history of the sign coming from your yard, one neighbor to another.
Absolutely, from Auburn Street to Oak Meadows Court.
So we will hold on to it for our next neighboring event on Oak Meadows Court.
So speaking of Oak Meadows Court, I want to really connect with you about how you were able to meet your neighbors, and I think it's a pretty incredible story of people coming together and what that can look like with the power of connection.
Well, the complicated part of it was I moved to Oak Meadows Court when I returned to Midland with my husband in 2020. And we moved in April. It was the beginning of the pandemic and everything was shut down and you had to stay in your house. And so we really couldn't meet anybody. We didn't have any neighbor time at that point. And then, of course, there was the flood in May. It was kind of a hectic start to
Absolutely.
our time on Oak Meadows Court. So meeting neighbors was just not feasible at the time. However, we did, as time went on, got to know the people on each side of us. And they've become good friends and wonderful neighbors, but I really didn't go beyond that. So I knew the people to my right and the people to my left, and that was it. Unfortunately, a few months ago, the gentleman on the left passed away, and his wife, Gail, let me know about his passing, and I said, "What can I do for you?" And at first, a widow always says, "Oh, I'm okay," or "There's nothing anybody can do. You can't bring him back." And so, but she did say, Tony was always out in the yard talking to everybody. Everybody knew Tony, and I have no way of notifying everybody of his passing. And so she said, do you have a list of people? She said, I don't even know last names. I don't have any phone numbers. And I just can't go door to door. I can't do it. It's too much. And so I said, don't worry about it. I got you. Now I thought my right door neighbor, who'd lived there longer than either Gail or I had, probably had a list. Well, it turned out he really didn't. So I recognized that even people who had lived on the court for quite a while didn't really know each other than to recognize cars and wave at people, but there was really no sense of neighborhood. So I had this summer a nurse, a traveling nurse from the hospital, staying at my home with her 11-year-old daughter. And so her daughter and I spent a lot of kitchen time and garden time together. And so I said, Emma, we're going to do some baking today. So we made muffins, and I wrote a letter to the neighbors and told them about Tony's passing and about when the service was and those kinds of things. And I included a form that where they could list the names of the people in their household, provide phone numbers, email addresses, anything they wanted, special interests, things that they would like to share. And I told them that if they completed it, they could email it back to me, they could text it back to me, they could drop it in my mailbox, which I don't think we're supposed to do, but don't tell.
We're not narcs here on the Maxwell's Midland show.
Okay. Anyway, I asked them to fill it out if they wanted to, and that I would compile the information and send it back out to everyone who participated. So within a few days, every household, not a person from every household, but the family from every household came to my front door, bringing their form, handing it to me, telling me how much they appreciated my letting them know about Tony, and that they were just really pleased to be able to get information and have contact information for our neighbors. So I proceeded to, and some came in and visited for a while, and some just, stood on the porch and chatted for a bit. And then I compiled all the information, emailed it back out, updated it with some changes that people provided, and we were a little more friendly about waving, about stepping outside when you saw someone out there. Tried to get a little better acquainted, but when I saw information starting to come out about Neighboring Week, I said, I think that would be a good time for a block party. Just bring these neighbors together and let everybody get better acquainted. As I looked at the information people had provided, I saw that there were a couple of people actively working in healthcare, and I'm a retired healthcare professional. There were a couple people who work at Dow and a Dow retiree. There were, on our short little court, 2 pastors from different denominations, but an interesting cross-section, but a lot of commonality, a lot of common interests. And so I thought, we need live interaction. This, an occasional text message is not enough. So I started talking about it, and in Wally Mayton's presence, I mentioned that I was going to do a block party. He's the one who told me you would have signs, because he believed that you had signs, and
They were too popular.
he told everybody he knew, I'm sure.
Here's the problem: is Wally's Neighboring episode came out, and it was such a hit that everyone came in and took all the signs. So
yeah. So at any rate, I survived without the sign, but I did send out a group text to the Oak Meadows Acorns.
I love it. It's officially now your thing.
That is our neighborhood name.
Okay.
And
first, you have a neighborhood name. Next thing, you'll
yes.
have a secret handshake. It could just evolve from here, really.
I can't tell you about the handshake.
Okay, it's a secret. If it's a secret, we don't talk about it.
However, we got together on Saturday. Saturday afternoon, I suggested that if everybody wanted to bring a dish to pass, I would make some pulled barbecue pork and my world-famous baked beans with secret ingredients. Can't tell you about it. And they could bring whatever they might like to share. We had a tremendous amount of food. We could have invited half of Midland, but We had a great meal. We had a lot of fun. We just moved chairs out into my driveway and gathered around, and there was just lots of laughter, lots of conversation, lots of people kind of drifting from one spot to another to have a conversation with another person that they didn't know. And at the end of the time together, as people started to leave, a couple of the women commented to me that they felt I needed to be the Oak Meadows social secretary. Perhaps I already was. And one of the men spoke up and said, "Oh no, we're nominating her for president of the Oak Meadows Acorns." So, but we did agree that this was fun. We need to do it again. And I'm already working on a plan for something in December that will be inside. We're not going to do outside in December. I'm not a winter fan, but we will get together and celebrate the holidays that occur. Whatever people tend to celebrate in December, we will gather and have more opportunity to just get acquainted. You know, some fun things happened that you just can't predict. We included, we kind of adopted a household that isn't really on Oak Meadows, but their backyards back up
Absolutely.
to houses on Oak Meadows. And last summer, Oak Meadows is one of the streets that was torn up all summer long. And there were times that we were not able to drive on our street or park in our driveways, and so the house behind us let my neighbor and I park in their driveway to at least have one car from each house that we could access quickly by going through a backyard instead of having to walk 3 or 4 blocks around the surrounding community looking for where did we leave that car. And so we then adopted them into our neighborhood circle. They are honorary acorns. And so they were there, and he is originally from Indiana. Turns out another gentleman who's at the other end of the street from me is also from Indiana. They evidently grew up fairly
Like right next to each other.
Well, you know, not necessarily, but they didn't know each other in Indiana, and here they are,
Right.
part of our little circle, and had lots of Indiana stories to share with each other, and just spent a lot of time visiting. And so, you know, you see things like that, you hear snippets of conversation, and you realize that sometimes you have a lot in common with someone that is just literally feet away. You
Absolutely.
know, not miles, not blocks even, just a short distance, a very quick walk, whose house you walk by every day, and you have things in common that you don't even know about. And if we don't come out our front doors and try to talk to the people around us, we just never know what wonderful relationships might be built right there.
And you said something really profound when you came into the foundation. You were saying if we can't get along with our neighbors and we can't just reach across to the house next to us, how can we expect entire countries to get along on the global scale? And that really resonated because it starts at that
Yeah.
local level of,
Exactly.
of an individual person.
Yeah.
And we all have very specific roles we play in a community.
Yeah.
And you've brought people together and really connected people.
You know, it was a completely selfish act. I just wanted a bigger community for me. I mean, you know, let's be clear, it's all about me.
No, it could be if and. You did this for a lot of other people as well.
Well, okay. But, you know, when you reach out, when you are a neighbor, you will find that anything you send out comes back tenfold.
Absolutely.
So, you know, if you are road raging on your own street, you're not going to be popular with the houses around you. And if all you can do is complain about how often your neighbor's dog barks, and Lucy can bark, then people aren't necessarily going to be anxious to reach out to you.
Absolutely.
But I think one of the things that I had said when we talked before was that how can we cross borders and make friends if we can't walk across the street?
Absolutely.
And so those lot lines need to disappear so that we are taking down barriers between those people who the only reason they are not our close friends is because we haven't spent time with them enough to know where our commonality is. And I don't think that there are many people that you can't become friends with if you reach out and try to do that. It doesn't take a lot. It didn't take all that much to write a letter. And now I admit I had a little active 11-year-old with lots of energy who could, help bake the muffins, help me pack bags, and then she went around to each house in the neighborhood and rang the bell. And if nobody answered, she hung it on their doorknob. And as people came home, they saw a cute little colored bag on their on their doorknob and took it inside. So it doesn't take a lot to get something started. And if it doesn't take off, if the first idea you have doesn't work, you just think about it and think, well, what else might I do? If that wasn't something appealing to them, then what can I do to reach out? But I'm finding that if you hold out your hand, most people will shake it. Very few people will spit at it.
Absolutely. And that's just the core of just being a good person and wanting to reach across those lot lines and extend those arms. There's been so many great stories that have came out of Neighboring Week, specifically in 2024, that's really looking at that actualized vision of what Neighboring Week was always supposed to be. And we really saw it come to fruition this year. I think there was over 20 plus articles in Midland Daily News about different things going on for Neighboring Week. There was multiple appearances on different shows or newscasts. I know Talk Midland, which is also recorded here at JNC Media, Trisha Fenby was on, Mayor Maureen Donker was on, and Wally came on this show, and the conversation centered around neighboring. And it was just really incredible to hear all those stories because we believe here at Maxwell's Midland that neighboring can be a core component of people attraction and retention. When people are more connected to one another, they're more rooted. That's family, that's community, that's important to people. And then also when people see that exercise and they understand that that's what's going on within a community, it becomes a welcoming place that really invites everyone in. In Midland right now, we are consistently on this battle for nationwide competition for talent, right? So we're always looking to bring people here, not to say that we don't want people in general, but the word talent gets thrown around a lot. Yeah. But really people attraction, and we want folks to want to live in Midland. And at one point in your career, you were a young professional that decided to move to Midland.
I did.
And I think that's a really interesting story as well. So when you first moved to Midland, and I understand you moved away and have came back again, but what was that like when you first came to Midland?
Oh my, well, that was 1977. So obviously I was a baby. It was unusual to leave home at, 6 months old, but
absolutely, Joyce.
Yeah, it was very unusual.
You could have just said 1997. People wouldn't have known any better, but hey.
Yeah, can we
But we tell the truth on this show. We tell the truth.
Okay. So I came in 1977. I came because I was recruited to work at what was then Midland Hospital, and I was the food service director. I was very excited to be here, and I really enjoyed the nearly 20 years. I guess it was 20 years that I spent in Midland. Most of that time I was working at the hospital. It was a time of great growth and change at the hospital. It became Mid-Michigan Healthcare while I was there. The affiliation with other hospitals in Gladwin and Clare and so forth began when I was still there. It was an exciting time to be there. The healthcare vision that Terry Moore had for for that hospital, for this community and beyond, was really amazing. When I look back on what was being done and how healthcare was being positioned in this community for the future, and then come back all of these years later and see the development of the campus and the number of hospitals that are now part of that affiliation and so forth. It is just amazing. I would regret having left there if I hadn't had some pretty exciting opportunities since then. But it was hard to leave Midland when I did, because it was always, I always felt very comfortable here. I felt very at home in Midland. I enjoyed the farmers market and so excited to know that it's still there, and I still go typically every Wednesday morning and Saturday morning and get my scone from Enjoy Bakery and scout all of the, I have one stand that I go to for Roma tomatoes and one place that I get my corn and one place that I get peaches. It's a great experience. So there's just so much in the Center for the Arts.
Absolutely.
You can't live in Midland and not fully enjoy and appreciate all of the cultural activities, as well as just the friendliness of the community. But we don't always bring that down to a personal kind of level. It's easy to just be entertained, to just go to the things that are happening and not think about, what have I made happen? What can I do, and how can I include people? When you talked about the idea of neighboring being kind of a magnet, kind of a gravity pull.
Absolutely.
I can share that when we first moved back to Michigan, we chose to live in Brighton, and it was predominantly because I moved here again for a job change, and my office was in Livonia. So I was then working for Trinity Healthcare, which is another terrific healthcare system. It's faith-based, and I very much enjoyed being part of Catholic healthcare for the time that I was with them. But living in Midland and driving to Livonia was certainly not doable.
Right.
And so Brighton was kind of the farthest away from the city where I felt comfortable with the commute, and I felt my husband would be somewhat comfortable in the community because it isn't quite as hectic as the areas as you move in closer to the city. So when I finally decided to retire, we were living in Brighton, and we had to have a talk about, is this where we want to spend the next 20 years? And I realized that Brighton is similar to Midland in many ways, but it's dissimilar in that we had no connection. I didn't even know the names of any of the people on our street except the house directly next door. It seemed like there was a for sale sign near us for the 4 years that we lived there. Every time we turned around, the house next door, the one across the street, it was just constant turnover. You never got acquainted with anybody. And it was a very transient community. I didn't feel a connection. And so it didn't really make sense to stay there. It was time for us to think about, we both had lived in Midland most of our lives, other than the 20 years in Florida. We needed to think about where else we wanted to live. And we talked about lots of things. We talked about the fact that as we age, healthcare is important.
Absolutely.
With a significant age difference between us, safety for me if I were ultimately alone was important. A sense of comfort, a sense of being closer to family were all factors as we made the decision. So ultimately, we determined Midland has good shopping for the things we need and buy routinely. Midland has a great healthcare system. Midland has a lot of activity. It's kind of funny to read on Facebook when people say there's nothing to do in this town. I'm like, you can't begin to do everything that happens in this town. But it's all about, it's about two things. It's about it being something that you're interested in, but it's also about having people who want to do those things with you.
Correct.
So it's about friends, it's about neighbors, it's about feeling you can become involved in things because people you want to spend time with are willing to do that or interested in doing that with you. And if you don't know the people around you, it gets back to we need to be neighbors.
It's such a good example of you coming here as a young professional and choosing Midland as a place to launch your career, meeting your husband, being here for 20-some years or 20 years, and then also later on in life choosing Midland as a place to settle in retirement. And sometimes that group gets lost in the mix when we're talking about people attraction, but Midland has a lot to offer for all different ages across the spectrum. And I think it's a great example to have you on the show to just say you chose Midland in retirement.
Yes. I chose it as a young professional because it was a great job opportunity in an industry that would always exist. You know, there are things that, you know, nobody does anymore. Healthcare will always be there. There will always be a need for healthcare. So as I may have mentioned, I don't know, when I went to Michigan State a long time ago, I started as a music major, theater minor, and that was kind of what my background had been in my youth and high school years. And so, of course, I became a healthcare food service director, and it was an obvious progression, but I chose healthcare very intentionally because I knew it would have longevity and there would always be a need. And if you're doing food service in a hospital, you're one of the few people who have the opportunity for people to be happy to see you. Nobody gets excited to see a phlebotomist come in their room with a needle. It just, they're just not the most popular people in the room. But the person who brings their meals, the person who comes in and asks, you know, what could I fix for you today? You have an opportunity to have a positive impact. So I was very intentional in that selection, but I also chose to come to Midland for it because, again, as a young single person, as a young single female, I wanted to feel safe in the community that I was choosing to live in. I had no intention of getting married, or you know, I had a plan, and then this man came along. Another whole story, but but I wanted to be somewhere that I knew I would be okay to be alone, and I wanted to be somewhere that I could still enjoy music and theater, even if not performing. I would at least have the opportunity to be part of a community where it was valued and it was available. And so those were all things that were very important to me. A great library is always a plus. So lots to do here for me. It met my interests as a young professional, certainly does again as a very young retiree.
Hey, and you moved here initially from Chicago, correct? Weren't you living in Chicago?
I was living in Chicago. I had been in Bad Axe. So those of you, I was raised in Ubley. I went to Michigan State, moved back to Bad Axe, and worked there for a while. And then I moved to Chicago. So talk about culture shock, going from Bad Axe, Michigan to Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah, they don't serve dough balls in Chicago.
Oh, no. There's just so many things that were different. In fact, they had a little going away party for me in Ubly, and knowing I was moving to Chicago. And the mayor of Ubly at that time, his name was Earl Longuski, was at my going away party. And he stood up in front of the room and said, I just want you to realize that the people in Ubly are a lot smarter than any of the people you're going to meet in Chicago. And I said, that's interesting, Earl. Why do you say that? And he said, because everybody in Ubly has heard of and knows where Chicago is. You won't meet anybody in Chicago that knows where Ubly is. He's got a point. He really does.
That's awesome.
So yes, I had been in Chicago, and there was a lot of pavement. And Chicago is a great city, but I'm not really a city girl. I tried, but it just wasn't working.
Needed that different type of density, so Midland kind of provided that little more of a community experience for you on the way back.
Exactly.
But I like you gave him a little line at first. You knew what your competition was going to be for this job. And
one of those things I should never have told you.
Hey, no, it's great. No, I think it's great, and I think it's okay to share.
So,
we don't have to name names, but
so I was a young, kind of brash professional. I had a few years of experience. I had a college education. I knew everything
and
there
you like
was.
a show, and you know you have history in theater. You like a show.
I like a show, and so I interviewed for the job in Midland, and I really wanted the job. And I had been told by someone in HR that they had narrowed the candidates to 2, and I was invited back for like a final interview. And food service is really a small community in general. And so, you talk to the vendors that call on you every week to get your food orders and so forth. They can tell you anything going on anywhere in food service. And so I was able to find out who that second person was. I thought it was important to know the competition. How do you prepare for battle if you don't know who you're going to fight?
I understand.
So I had found out who the other person was. And it was a man. He was in his 50s. And so I proceeded to do my own research into his background. And it was hard because in those days you didn't have Facebook. You couldn't look up a profile. The internet was not a thing.
Were you like making phone calls and having fake accents, or?
I don't do fake accents. Well, a few things.
Okay.
But yeah, I was making phone calls and I was checking things out, and I eventually may have obtained a copy of his resume from someone.
Okay.
And I determined that he had never been at a hospital as large as Midland, and he had never stayed anywhere more than 2 or 3 years. So in my mind, it may look like he has 25 years experience, but I'm thinking he's got 2 years experience 10, 12 times. I think I'm in pretty good shape here. So I get the call. The interviews happened. Everything went well. I came away thinking, I got this. I was on fire. I did so good. And I get the phone call. We loved your creativity. We loved your enthusiasm. We think you're going to do really well, but we've decided to go with the proven record. And because sometimes my mouth works faster than my brain and things just fall out, without even realizing that I was saying it out loud, I said bravely into the phone, if you'd rather have somebody on the way out than on the way up, that's up to you.
Let them know, Joyce. Let them know.
And then I thought, oh, that was such a bad move. And then, afterwards I'm thinking, well, I mean, they turned me down. So,
yeah.
But
so
they
left
think
that
I'm
impression.
a brat. But, so a year later, when it was determined that he maybe hadn't been quite the right match for the organization, and they were searching again. They looked me up. Took some time. It's a complicated thing, but ultimately, I got the call that they would like to talk to me again, and flew me in from Chicago, and ultimately offered the position, and I made the move back to Michigan and to Midland for the first time.
Well, there you go.
And, I probably would have stayed in Midland for a really long time. Maybe I would still be here. But I did get married. And when we got married, my husband told me that there were 2 seasons in Michigan. And I'm thinking, in school they talked about 4. And
Yeah. You're like, snow, not snow.
I don't, yeah. So he explained to me that there was the boating season and the bitching season. So after we'd been married a few years, I determined moving him to a longer boating season was really important.
You got to reduce that bitching season as much as possible. So as much
yeah.
time as you can spend on the water.
So moving to Florida, living on a canal, having a boat in the backyard, that worked quite well for a long time.
We talk a lot about people attraction on here. I can't promise a canal in Midland. Not year round, at least. Not year round.
Well,
so.
Unfortunately, my boater has departed the earthly world. And, that was pretty tough. I had no idea when we moved here in 2020 and the world was shut down and there were so many things that we wanted to do that we couldn't do. We were just spending every day pretty much alone and with each other. But it was a great year in many ways, and we were together all the time. We were never closer than we were that year in Midland, but we closed on our house on April 23rd of 2020, and he passed away at my Michigan Health on April 23rd of 2021.
Wow, exactly 1 year.
Exactly 1 year. Exactly 1 year. But I realize, God's time is always perfect. We have to trust it. And I have, and I've accepted that he had to go. I've been mad at him a few times. I still climb into bed at night and tell him about my day. Mm-hmm. I still, when I'm cooking, wonder what he would like. So he's still very much part of my life and always will be. But he left me a wonderful family. Having not intended to marry, I was not young when we did marry, and he already had 2 grown sons, and they have become very much my family. So in Larkin Township, I have a bonus son and his wife, so a daughter-in-law, and 4 grandchildren who are now grown and scattered around the country. The last one living in Michigan is leaving later this month for California. 2 are in Seattle. 1 is in Colorado. But great places to visit.
Absolutely.
And they have been a wonderful family, and I'm very much part of that family that he brought me into. So we don't always know how things will develop. We don't always know how our family will come to pass. But if we're open to it, families and neighbors can fill huge voids.
Absolutely. And I know you have, even beyond your neighborhood, friends that you will bake with and kind of travel around the community with as well.
Yeah, one of my very good friends, Barbara Sumi. Hi, Barb. Many people in Midland know Barbara Sumi. She taught at Northwood for, 150 years, I think it was. Oh. She'll get me for that.
A short 5 to 10 years, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. But she and I periodically get together and bake cookies all day and package them up and drive around town and deliver them to some of our friends from church, especially focus on some of the people that have a harder time getting out, and just people that we think could use a little brightness in their life. And so people never know when we might show up with cookies or with a meal or something, especially when we're aware that friends of ours are struggling with whatever. You know, there might be illness in the house. There might be worries about adult children. There might be, things happening that are difficult for them. And so it's hard to be angry or upset when you're eating a cookie. You might be upset before you have a cookie. You might not feel good after a cookie, but while it's in your mouth, while it's in your hand, there's going to be a smile.
Absolutely. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy cookies sometimes. And when they get delivered, even better.
Yes. So we do try to, keep some fun in the world.
Well, I love that. And we talked a little bit, too, about that family that you have here as well, and how you've got these grandkids now scattered throughout the country, some of which are on the West Coast. And I know you've done Thanksgiving in Seattle now. And
Yes.
something fun that we like to do here on the Maxwell's Midland Show is each episode we like to do a little bit of a draft, and we kind of go down the list of a few favorite things in a specific category.
Okay.
So especially with your career in food service, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of your favorite foods. So and with Thanksgiving coming up, I think it's pretty logical that we hop on the Thanksgiving train.
Absolutely.
So this is not the most imperative foods for the Thanksgiving dinner. It's our favorites. So these are the ones that we like the most. And, mine might be a little boring. I'm not really sure, but I'm excited to hear what some of yours are. And I'm going off the cuff a little bit. So I want you to go ahead and start it off. What is your number one?
Okay, my number one. Well, remembering that life is short, we should start with dessert pumpkin pie.
Ooh.
There cannot be a Thanksgiving without a pumpkin pie. It can't be done.
Now, pumpkin pie is extremely crucial. I was talking to my girlfriend last night. I said, what kind of desserts do I put in this one? And pumpkin pie was on my short list of things that I might mention. But you mentioned earlier that you have some famous baked beans. And for my number one, it actually is my grandma's baked beans. So every single holiday when we were going to, and I was raised by my grandparents, so every single holiday when we were going to different houses to celebrate as families, grandma's baked beans were always the thing that made me the most excited. So I still think about them all the time and think about my grandma all the time, and she has since passed, and love her to death, but we are carrying on the tradition of Kevin's grandma's baked beans as number one for me.
Okay. So the second thing, and it's something that I typically only make at Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it's just not Thanksgiving or Christmas without my cranberry sauce.
Ooh.
My cranberry sauce does not come in the can. You can't slice it into round discs of jellied stuff. My cranberry sauce has real cranberries and oranges and apples and walnuts, and it's so good.
My next one is a utility player, as I like to refer to them. So I've been keeping up with the Tigers recently. At the time of recording here, the Tigers are still in the playoffs and moving on to the next round.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about their roster is they have a lot of utility players that move around and kind of can fit different categories. I look at stuffing as the ultimate utility player of Thanksgiving because it kind of fits with mashed potatoes and gravy. It can fit with turkey. It can fit with ham. It can fit with all these different things. And
what
it kind of pops up.
Stuffing?
Hey, I'm not gonna. Do you make a specific kind of stuffing?
Well, I do.
I mean, I'll tell you me. I'm just gonna be Stouffer's because that's just all I can pull off. But I like it when it's prepared and it's really, really good, and other people make it.
Kevin, now that we are friends and
Absolutely.
neighbors,
Hey,
I'm going to have to teach you.
This is going to be a beneficial relationship here.
Yes, I make stuffing, but it's on your list, so I'll let you have it, even if
Okay.
it's Stouffer's. Oh, and by the
It's
way,
not
when
really
I-
Stouffer's, but that's all
Okay.
I could pull off,
Okay,
probably.
well,
So
I got to tell you, interesting connection. When I was living in Chicago, what I didn't mention is I was working for Stouffer's in their management food service
that's funny.
division at that time. So yeah, we have a connection there.
we never
too.
mentioned the business, but that's funny.
That's funny. That is funny. Okay.
Number 3.
I think, well, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. One time in my professional life, I tried to serve Thanksgiving dinner in a hospital to patients without doing turkey.
Ooh.
I really thought that was going to be the end of my job and career and life as I knew it. Never did that again, have never since had a Thanksgiving meal without turkey. So I think it just has to be said. It's not exciting, but you can make turkey pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
I got to tell you, turkey is best if you start a few days ahead, brine that puppy in a terrific brine with kosher salt and brown sugar and spices and so forth, and then you take it out of that brine, dry it out really good, season it, and put it in the refrigerator overnight so the skin gets really dry. You can't brown a skin if it isn't dry, and so. And then if you spatchcock the turkey, you can cook it so that it's done evenly throughout without drying out the breast. So there are tricks to make turkey memorable, even if you've had it a million times and you go, well, you got to have turkey, but who really likes it that much?
We are giving the inside scoop here on the Maxwell's Midland show as we're moving towards Thanksgiving. I might have to cut that part out and put it out right before Thanksgiving to remind folks they need to prepare this turkey correctly. Wow, Joyce, you're getting me excited over here, making me hungry. So number 3 here, we can go a few different ways with it. I think what I'm going to go with here is another mainstay dish. I really like ham as well at Thanksgiving. So you got turkey. I'm going to add ham. And that was kind of a 50-50 thing at our Thanksgivings growing up. But I think, you go with what you know. And ham popped up a lot at my Thanksgivings.
We usually, at home, we had turkey for Thanksgiving and ham for Christmas. But I do know that there are people who, if they lack imagination, they might serve
Absolutely.
ham.
It allows for really good leftovers for the next week,
Well, and I do love me a good ham.
Absolutely.
So, I will have to admit that is a good choice.
All right. Next one. Number 4.
So one year, my parents, I was still single. I was living in Midland. My parents had moved to Arizona. I was going to see them at Christmas, but I really couldn't afford to go to their place in Arizona for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I was really going to be home alone. And one of my very, very close friends who lived in Bad Axe, and I had known since I was 6 years old, when she married one of my dad's lifelong best friends. And so when she realized that I was going to be alone for Thanksgiving, she said, no, you're coming to our house. Her name is Diane. We've since lost her as well, but she was a fabulous cook and very much Italian. And so, yes, on her Thanksgiving table, there was turkey and dressing and cranberries and all of the things that we think of for Thanksgiving. But as a good Italian cook, she could not have a holiday meal without lasagna. So we also had lasagna for Thanksgiving dinner. And I haven't done it frequently since then, but I always remember that Thanksgiving, spending it with her kids who are still great friends of mine, and her lasagna, which was amazing.
It's always fun to have those specific type of holidays that pop out as well. And we didn't make anything too unique, but also during the pandemic, it was must have been 2020, I believe, did Thanksgiving with just couple friends that, you could have in your bubble. And
Yeah.
it was just a nice little way to, I'll always remember that specific
Yeah.
Thanksgiving because it was abnormal. So lasagna, very interesting. With my number 4, I'm actually surprised this hasn't came up yet, but mashed potatoes and gravy.
Oh, well, yeah.
You got to have mashed
Yeah.
potatoes and gravy. And it's almost across the board, regardless of anything else that's at the table for the dinner portion of it. Mashed potatoes and gravy pops up on all of them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go mashed potatoes and gravy.
Oh, boy.
Number 5. Let's end strong.
Number 5. I think I would have to. I have one that's a little unusual.
Okay.
One of the newest members to my family is my oldest granddaughter's husband, and he has a dairy allergy.
Okay.
So pumpkin pie, of course, is made with cream and eggs and things that he can't have. And I can't have a Thanksgiving dinner. I can't be at a Thanksgiving dinner without a pumpkin pie. But when we had Thanksgiving together and Mauricio was there, I thought, we have to have a second dessert anyway, so people have something to eat next to their pumpkin pie, because I can't imagine anybody not eating pumpkin pie if they're allowed to.
Right.
But I had to come up with something for Mauricio. And so I did find on the internet a vegan cake
Okay.
that the recipe read pretty good. I thought it would be pretty good, but it just wasn't special enough to have for Thanksgiving. So I used it as the base to make a vegan apple spice cake
Ooh.
with no dairy, that was so rich and good. It didn't need frosting. It didn't need whipped cream, although I'm pretty sure my daughter-in-law can't eat cake without whipped cream. I'm pretty sure some of the whipped cream from the pumpkin pie
we
may
won't
have
tell.
landed
We
on
won't
that.
tell.
I'm just saying. But so a good family holiday neighboring dinner needs to respect the restrictions that your guests need to follow. So if
Absolutely.
you have someone in your family who has allergies, if you have someone in your neighborhood who is not able to tolerate certain foods, if you have people of different ethnicities, different religious backgrounds that have rules that they follow, you need to work that into not just your everyday meals, but especially your holiday meals. You don't want someone to be sitting at the table and have half of the foods being served things that that individual can't have through no fault of their own. It's not like they're being a picky eater. They're just not
Absolutely.
able to tolerate certain things. So
Made sure he was included.
So I would say if neighboring is about being inclusive, then you need to have some things. If you have vegans in your family, you need some vegan choices. If you have allergies, they need to be respected. If you have different religious backgrounds, especially,
Absolutely.
my Jewish friends, in some cases, have some very different food requirements
Absolutely.
to honor their religion. We need to honor those differences. And again, it's about crossing the street, honoring, respecting borders, but being willing to cross over and do it in a loving, respectful, accepting way.
Well, it's also Global Diversity Month here now, so that is a beautiful, beautiful message, this Global Diversity Month, and we love that. So with my 5th one, I want to have a little bit of fun as well. So I started thinking about what the last few Thanksgivings have looked like for me. Well, I haven't missed a Lions game the last few years on Thanksgiving. So I was like, do I put Coney dog down? Do I put a slice of Little Caesars pizza? That's a little strange. So But we do always still have a Thanksgiving dinner afterwards, and we have a spot that we go to in Metro Detroit with some family on my girlfriend's side, and we still have a beautiful, great dinner. But something we always have during that second football game is we have our afternoon football beer.
Okay.
So I'm adding the afternoon football beer
as
the fifth piece, and it's specific because football beer is football beer. So I think, whatever that is to you, it's your afternoon football beer. So I'm adding that on.
The calories and alcohol content do not count if it's a football.
Correct. I agree. If it's a football game, because you're all nervous, so you're anxious anyway. So those calories are being burnt.
And I have to tell you, this is really important. I am so excited that not only that the Tigers made the
postseason.
Yeah. I'm so glad that they are still in it and that they did it in 2 games. For a very specific reason. When I'm not hanging out with you, one of the things that I am involved with is a podcast with a friend, and we watch Days of Our Lives, and we watch General Hospital, and we get together and do a Zoom live Facebook feed podcast about our shows. And so because the Tigers played on
ABC at 2:30.
On ABC, there was no General Hospital on
the show.
Tuesday or Wednesday, but there'll be a show today because the Tigers won in 2.
There you go.
So I am such a huge sports fan. People who know me well know exactly what a huge sports fan I am. Love a good game. Love the Tigers. Love them being in the playoffs.
But
love them doing it in 2 games.
There you go.
Giving me the 3rd day of the week.
Well, that's awesome. And by the time this airs, who knows? Hopefully they're still in it by then. That would mean really good things.
Yeah.
But
wouldn't it
but
be,
hopefully not in the daytime, right?
But well, yeah. And let's just be real. I would enjoy seeing the Tigers in the World Series and the Lions
in the Super Bowl.
Did I get the
You got
those
the
right?
correct teams, correct sports.
Okay, yeah.
Joyce is our new sports correspondent here on Max Loves Midland. We love it.
That'd work out real well.
Well, Joyce, I've just had an incredible time with you today, and I appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us a little bit about neighboring. And I think your neighboring story is very inspiring, and I think it's a gift to the community. I think you're a gift to the community, and I appreciate you so much. But there's something I always ask every single guest at the end of a show, and if we're thinking about Midland moving forward, what are some of the things that you hope and dream for our community?
I guess I would, oh my. As I look around, for my needs, Midland community is pretty close to perfect. The things that I'm interested in are here. I feel like we are all responsible for reaching out to the wonderful people who live here to share our gifts with them and to learn about their gifts and so forth. And we can all do that. It doesn't have to be planned. But I do recognize that there are some areas that aren't as perfect. I wish there was more affordable housing. I wish that there were perhaps maybe more diversity in terms of activities that would interest different teens. If we have teens that are interested in sports, there's a lot going on. If we have teens that are interested in music and theater and arts, there's a lot going on. But that doesn't necessarily hit every child in the community.
Correct.
And some of the things that are available for families also come with a fairly high price tag. And so I would like to have, I would like to see a community where more is available to more of the people who live here and would like to stay here, who would like to embrace the community. And we don't always remember that when we were commanded to love our neighbors, that God already knew they wouldn't all look like us.
Yep.
They wouldn't all love like us. They wouldn't all think like us. They wouldn't all worship like us. But our command is to love them anyway.
Absolutely.
And maybe even especially.
Well, I love that message, and thank you so much for being here with us today, and we really appreciate you being on the Maxwell's Midland Show.
Well, it's been fun.
Well, thank you, and thank you guys for joining us today on
And
the
thank you
Maxwell's
for my
Midland Show.
sign.
And we have the Celebrate Neighboring sign finally. We come full circle.
Line.
Joyce finally has her Celebrate Neighboring sign, and we hope you all are celebrating neighboring too, not just during Neighboring Week, but year-round. So we appreciate you all joining us today on the Maxwell's Midland Show. And earlier in the episode, Joyce said if something doesn't work out, sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board and look again. Well, that's kind of our mantra at the end of every show. If you build a bridge in your life and it doesn't work out, build a tridge. Thank you for joining us. Subscribe wherever you consume media. Maxwell's Midland is your entertainment, resources, and collective improvement hub for Midland County. Plan your next adventure in Midland at maxwellsmidland.com.